It's spoopy season, and Mike Flanagan is back on Netflix with another story to tell us. Let's talk about the fall of the House of Usher. Mike Flanagan just does not miss. Well, except for some of his movies, which are kind of mediocre. But Mike Flanagan on Netflix just does not miss. Well, except for The Midnight Club, which got cancelled. But Mike Flanagan on Netflix, when he casts his wife, just does not miss. Now, if you don't know who Mike Flanagan is, he's the guy who created and brought to us some great horror shows on Netflix, including The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and Midnight Mass. And it was with The Haunting of Bly Manor that I realized that Mike Flanagan maybe has an interest or likes Edgar Allan Poe, because The Haunting of Bly Manor was a gothic romance, and that is something that Poe has worked in. That is something that Poe is known for. So that's when I knew that Mike Flanagan probably likes Poe. But with his new series, he doesn't just like Poe, he loves Edgar Allan Poe, because The Fall of the House of Usher is Mike Flanagan's adaptation. No, not quite adaptation, more like tribute to Edgar Allan Poe. Now, the story of The Fall of the House of Usher follows the Usher family, a family that owns a pharmaceutical empire and is led by the patriarch Roderick Usher, aided by his sister Madeline Usher, and the company is run with various divisions by their children. At the start of the series, we find out that all their children have died, and so now it's just Madeline and Roderick left. So Roderick is also being haunted by the ghosts of his dead children, and thus he decides, on a dark and stormy night, to call over C. Auguste Dupin, the investigator or the DA who's been chasing down the Usher family because of their various crimes that they have committed in building this empire, but he's never nailed them on. So he calls Dupin over in order to give a confession, and so unfolds the story of how his children died and why this is happening. Most of the characters are named after Poe's characters from his short stories, and also the titles for each episode are titles from his short stories, and what happens within each episode is a loose adaptation of those stories. Now, I'm not that familiar with Poe's works. I've read one and Wikipedia'd a few, such as The Mask of the Red Death, The Black Cat, and I've read The Telltale Heart. But I feel like each of these adaptations are somewhat true to what has been written by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, the story is in the form of a narration from Roderick Usher to C. Auguste Dupin, and the direction, especially in the first episode, where it is a bit of a narration of a story that has happened, kind of reminded me a little bit of Wes Anderson, which is funny because Wes Anderson himself has a few shorts on Netflix adapting the work of another great author in Roald Dahl. This show really isn't a horror to me, because I feel like the genre in which it operates in is more of a mystery, a gothic mystery with horror elements, and it is following this family and why these things are happening, and it takes place in 3 separate time periods. We have the present, where you have Roderick Usher narrating, telling and confessing to C. Auguste Dupin what has happened. Then we have the immediate past of when the children of Roderick Usher are dying. Then we have the far past, where it shows how Roderick and Madeline Usher came to build this pharmaceutical empire. Now, the cast is made up of all of Mike Flanagan's favorites, including Henry Thomas, who has been with him through Hill House, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and now this, as well as Carlos Gugino and Rahul Kohli, who came on in Bly Manor and has worked with him until this. And of course, he has to cast his muse, Kate Siegel. Also, he has brought in a few actors from Midnight Mass, which didn't do so well compared to his other works, but he's brought on who I feel were the standouts in those series in Ruth Codd and Saurian Sapkota. Also in the cast and who deserve a shout out are Bruce Greenwood, who plays Roderick Usher, and Carl Lumbly, who plays C. Auguste Dupin, because a lot of the story is being shared between these two characters. It's Roderick confessing and revealing the truth about the past to Dupin, and these two have to carry our attention a lot of the time. It's just these two men in a room sitting opposite each other having a conversation, and while the story is incredibly engaging, this mystery of what's happening to the children of the House of Usher, it is down to these two actors to keep our attention in the low moments, and especially Bruce Greenwood, because he has to play this character who's giving out his life story basically, while also being haunted by visions of his dead children at the same time. So shout out to these two for an amazing job and an amazing performance. Also, Carla Gugino gives a standout performance. She's normally very reliable to give good performances. It's why Mike Flanagan goes back to her, but she gives a great performance as this personification of death, or maybe the devil, who is basically haunting the House of Usher. So yeah, after going through this series, I feel like Mike Flanagan has another hit for Netflix on his hands, especially if this is his last one before he moves on, which is what I'm hearing. Like I said, if you come here for a horror experience, this isn't it. It is definitely more of a gothic mystery, because we're following the story of how the children of the House of Usher died, and this is Roderick Usher retelling their stories to us. And as I mentioned earlier, these are an adaptation of Poe stories, a very loose adaptation that's been fitted for this show. And so yeah, if you think that's something you enjoy, I think you should check this series out. For me, I will give The Fall of the House of Usher an 8 out of 10. Also, have you seen any of Mike Flanagan's other works such as Hill House, Bly Manor, or Midnight Mass? And if you have, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Also, I'm adding these end cards so you can check out my thoughts on some other series such as One Piece and Ted Lasso.